Today's topic is...
breaking down the 6th Legion's design and law.
Victory needs no explanation.
Defeat allows none.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to WAYPN. I'm Cal.
And I'm Sunny.
Today we're going to be discussing the 6th Legion's pre- and post-heresy design, as well as redesign.
And within these segments, we'll be covering design breakdown, design analysis, art, design versus law, and final notes.
Let's get on with it. Design breakdown. Alright, Sunny, this is the standard armor for the 6th Legion. What do you think?
Well, right off the bat, he's got a variation of the visor helmets that we usually see with the Mark II armors. Yeah, I actually researched on what these different armors are called. And they've got little air vents at the bottom, which is quite new. Not something we see often in the other helmets. And he's got these tubes connecting to the Spangen helm. So what a Spangen helm is basically a helmet that's separated by 4 different segments, and then they're conjoined by like a cross in the middle. So that's what a Spangen helm is.
Okay.
And at the top, so it looks like an inverted Viking helmet almost, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but in a more futuristic style, of course. And of course, we see them in an iron armor, but the color is very dark and imposing. In fact, it has a very industrial look with its rivets, and the white markings and numbering give it a modern, militaristic look. Very standard-looking weapons like the pistol, grenade, and some sort of a biochemical weapon I see on his belt. And overall, in particular, this armor gives the idea of a Marine in a position of authority, someone who maintains order, in my opinion.
Well, Sunny, actually...
It's the Space Wolves! It's the Space Wolves! I know it's the Space Wolves! It's Space Wolves! Yes!
Okay, well, that puts a bit of a wrench in our plans, so...
It's Space Wolves.
Alright, the usual way we do design versus law is Sunny doesn't know anything about what we're talking about. So here we're going to have to pass out what Sunny actually knows first. What Sunny knows. Sunny, can you tell us what you know about the Space Wolves?
Well, I know that they come from a planet called Fenris, and it's supposed to be really extremely cold, a very extreme climate, and their Primarch, Leman Russ, not Riemann Luss. He actually was raised by one of the Fenrisian wolves, or I think a clan of them at least, and he actually developed some of these wolf-like genetics, and when that got passed down to the Legion, they also carry some sort of wolf-like genetics, and I know they have some sort of thing where they have a combined wisdom that gets passed down through the genes as well, and they're very wise in terms of a Legion. That's pretty much what I know.
And that's what Sunny knows, and I'm not going to correct anything or give any additional information, otherwise this whole exercise would be a bit pointless. But keep in mind, this is what Sunny knows this time.
If you're new to the Design vs. Law series, normally I don't know anything about the law, I only comment about the design based on how they give their first impression, so I don't know anything about in-depth law knowledge, anything.
And with that aside, let's get back to it. Design breakdown. Alright, Sunny, cat's out of the bag. This is the pre-heresy design of the Space Wolves. Let me know what you think.
So he's quite similar to the very first Marine we saw, which I know the drill by now. That's actually what they used to look like before they met their Primarch, am I right?
Yep.
Yes, so he looks similar in that sense. The metal this time is actually a little bit more cold. It has a medieval look compared to the modern military look of the previous armor. And of course, it's classic. There's a lot more wolf elements being shown here with the cloak, the wolf claw symbol on the shoulder pad and on the knee. And there are more runes on the chest and belt. Overall, this design communicates that this Legion comes from a very cold climate. Wolves hold a special significance for them, and they come from a Nordic origin. Pretty sure this is straight up Viking inspired. It's very clear cut here.
Alright, Sunny, here are 4 other Space Wolves so that everybody knows that I'm not just tricking you. What do you think of them?
Oh, they all look pretty cool, but the one that really attracts my attention is the guy with the skull, so let's talk about him first.
Alright, you want to talk about him first? Go for it.
So, the skull that he's got, it's clearly a wolf skull that he has on his head, which is quite interesting. I think we don't really see that expressed in a lot of the chapters, but I think chaplains tend to have some form of skull on their mask, so that's very fitting. And he's got wolf-like motifs on the power pack, which is also something that sometimes certain Marine designs will have. But of course, it's Space Wolves, so it's very fitting. And he has a lot of this brass going on, which is common for Vikings to use more sort of brutish, less, more dull metals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty much fitting. And of course, they've gone back to that dark iron-like metal, which shows that imposing-like aspect with this entire design. And of course, when you've got glowing red eyes and fangs, you pretty much look like a beast. So I think it's very fitting.
All right, it seems like you've said everything that you can say about him, so who would you like to do next?
Let's do the special Terminator guy.
All right, let's get to it.
So the elements and colors meld together to make him look like a solid block, more so than the other Terminators that we have talked about in the previous Legions. And I think that actually adds a little bit more to his imposing structure when he's just a block of fur, or you get what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And he's not that much different from the post-Primarch in the Mark II armor, and they've gone back to that dark metal imposing look, as I've mentioned earlier, and there's more use of the Nordic knots and runes and such, and they incorporate these leather. I actually looked up this word. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's called Petruges. It's something.
Okay, what? Is that a New York hot dog?
I wish it was. It's the leather strap thingies that dangle.
I'll have 2 Petruges.
2 Petruges, please. Can you imagine like sausages basically dangling from a bratwurst here? I've got different varieties for the troops. Okay, that's bad. But essentially that's what these the leather straps are, and obviously that's a nod to Roman design in their military.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit weird why they've brought it over here when they're trying to go for the Nordic theme.
Yeah, yep.
It aesthetically speaking, it looks nice. It still looks very regal and, like a big guy coming at you sort of thing. And the wolf talons along the belt suggest it's some sort of a honor marking of some kind, some sort of ritual that they might have. Like, oh, how many people have you killed? Here's a claw for each or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and other than that, he's pretty much does what he says on the tin, I would say.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like you've got opinions and you're not afraid to share them. So
I sure do.
All right. Shall we go to the next one? Who do you want to do next?
Let's do the Black Legionary guy.
All right. Tell me what you think.
Well, to be fair, Cal, I wasn't really excited to do this one because the other two seemed a bit more exciting.
Okay.
And he looks like just standard guy, but let's talk about him anyway. So we've clearly moved on to the Mark IV Maximus power armor. For those of you who don't know.
She's learning things.
I'm learning.
She's evolving. I can't wait for the moment where she corrects me on the mark of a power armor or some nonsense like this.
Actually. But yes, okay. So the thing I like about this one is that it seems to combine the pre-Primarch armor design with the post-Primarch design. So the dark metal and the light trims in the bonding studs may have their specific in-law use, but it's actually a variation of the rivets used in their original armor from an aesthetic purpose, aesthetic perspective.
Okay,
so I feel that the studs actually replace the rivets. So one half of the chest has the Celtic knots and the runic designs, and it's on the belt and the knee as well. But on the other half, you can see the wolf talons along the shoulder, which, like we have seen from the other variations, they all seem to carry. It's a carryover trait, right? And then it also combines the industrial with the medieval, suggesting a design that knows its past and its present, which, like I said earlier, I do know a little bit about the law, and because they are a chapter that prizes wisdom from the first wolf or whoever, going all the way down, I feel like this armor really represents that part of the law for them.
Mm-hmm. All right, and what about the final Terminator?
He does look a little bit more normal, quote-unquote normal, as compared to the other Terminator we took a look at, because he's got less things, like less elements.
Yeah, less dangly bits.
That's dangly bits. But he does have a lot of those runic patterns. It's really ornate on his armor. So that must mean some sort of later Terminator guy, perhaps. But he does have a different type of shoulder pad going on, which looks a lot like one of the knight type pauldrons, a different variation. I'll put a picture of that. And yeah, I think I like the circular bits on the shoulder pad as well, because that looks a lot like the type of things that you would see as a brooch on Viking capes and
Okay,
shields.
yep.
So I think that's very fitting. But other than that, that's the only thing I can point out about this guy.
All right, fair enough. Shall we move on to
Design
design analysis? Is there anything particular that you want to point out with this analysis?
Oh, nothing much. I think it does its job. You can tell very clearly the hierarchy and ranking for each of these Marines that we have seen here. And, standard color language wise, it shows that they're from a cold place or they're a cold legion. And they're also very brutish. And they show passion through their fighting spirit, through the Nordic elements, things like that. And I think it clearly communicates exactly what they're doing.
Well, I do want to point out one thing that you didn't point out, which I think is important. Okay, so on that other Legionnaire that you were looking at?
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed is he has the same design as Chaos. He's got asymmetric design. Notice that with his embedded...
With the bonding studs.
Yeah, with the bonding studs, yes.
The other thing I didn't get to express with all the runic knots and all that was that it shows that they're a superstitious legion because runes like the Triskele and the Triquetra, I believe is how it's said, is a show of runes that you would apply to yourself to grant you victory in battle or for protection, things like that. So I would say they have these higher beliefs in something else.
Okay, yeah. Well, shall we move on to art? All right, Sunny. So here is the very first one I want to show you. What do you think of this artwork right here?
This one doesn't exactly fully showcase like the brutishness of the spacewolves, but I would say that the pose and the way that this Marine is looking at you has that sort of wolf-like glare into your soul kind of look to him, I believe. But that's pretty much all I can say about it, because there's not too much going on. He's pretty much shrouded in all black armor. You can see the other wolves in the background battling it out, but he's the only one staring you down like a beast, if you will.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess that's it for this one.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd say more, but let's move on to the next one.
He's got runes on his gun, pretty much.
What about this one?
Oh, this one, this one definitely shows, a space wolf really coming into battle. Is that that's a Thousand Suns guy.
Yeah, you know it now because
of the symbol. Yeah,
yeah,
I actually thought at first glance he was Chaos, but then once I saw the symbol, I was like, okay, he's a Marine. But yeah, you can really see how he's sort of... This really showcased that barbaric aspect that we talked about with the Nordic inspirations. This really showcases that. And he seems to be a very much older gentleman. I don't think we see that a lot, actually, with the other Space Marine legions.
No, you don't. Not at all, do you? You almost never see
almost see old guys. Yeah, so I think that's very interesting. Again, I think that ties back with...
Or should I say, you don't see characteristically old people. Like some of the other Space Marines might have age, but they don't show it.
They don't show it at all, yeah. I mean, they are meant to be like super soldiers. They live for very long and all that. But this one clearly looks like old dude, but not necessarily a bad one, because like lots of dwarves look like that as well. But that doesn't mean that they are weak or... frail or anything.
No. All right.
So, yeah.
Well, let's move on to the final artwork, and as you can guess, it's going to contain Lehman Russ.
Ooh, Lehman Russ.
So every single one of these times, we can't go past an iconic artwork.
Without a Primarch.
yeah. But I want you to focus on the actual Space Wolves in the background, not on Russ himself. What do you pick up from them?
They look very imposing, and they look like stone almost, with the gray that is being used in the armor. I think that just makes them look like absolute beasts just following their Primarch into battle.
Oh, okay. So almost like dogs of war sort of thing.
Well, I don't want to call them dogs of war because they're more than that, But I get where you're coming from when you say that.
Yeah, all right. Are you ready for Design versus Law? All right, Sunny, do you want me to hit you with it?
Of course.
Okay, so essentially, you were pretty much right with everything that you said. I'm not 100% sure on that whole genetic memory thing. I think that's off. But yes, Lehman Russ was raised by wolves and they were killed while he was away, but that's Lehman Russ, not the Space Wolves. However, there was one thing which I thought was fairly important when it comes to the Space Wolves. So a lot of the warriors that he fought with became Space Marines,
Yeah.
despite the fact that they were adults.
Oh, yeah, okay. And they're not usually adults?
No,
in
you know
Space
the
Marines?
Space Marine process, like, it starts when you're, like, a young boy slash teenager.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's really young.
Yeah. So with that, you know how Luther became a half Space
Yeah.
Marine sort of thing? So they refused that completely, and their survival rate was surprisingly high.
Nice.
Yeah, so unlike other legions, they weren't being run by essentially child soldiers.
Right. So do you think that's where the whole quote-unquote wisdom thing comes from?
Well,
Would you say?
for me, look, I look at them as a Dark Angel player, and I can't really say that they're quite that wise, but there is a bit of tension between the Space Wolf players and Dark Angel players. Like, but I think it's playful and fun. I don't think anybody takes it too serious. Look, I will say I think that's more on the Dark Angel players than the Space Wolf ones.
Right, okay.
But I do think like it's a lot more common for them to respect one another, at least with the Space Wolf players that I've met, than other people respecting the Dark Angels.
Right.
But the other thing that I wanted to bring up was the fact that you were looking at those runes and the religious, the religious significance of them, rather than them just being a design aesthetic, because I didn't think about them from a point of a religious significance.
You didn't pick it up as in terms like, oh, you know, they seem to have a lot of this. It's probably just an aesthetic thing, but no, it's actually it has.
I do know that that's part of it, but I guess because that's part of my culture, I just sort of absorbed it and didn't even think about it.
Yeah, it's second nature to you.
Yeah,
it's not something that you sort of pick up on and be like, you know what? Oh yeah, I guess you're right that they are probably a religious sort of or superstitious type of legion if they're, you know, marking themselves with these sorts of things.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because there is no image like there are of these other Space Wolves that we go through, that sort of standard front profile
the
look.
templates.
Yeah. There is no template of the rune priests.
Right, okay.
And the rune priests are the psychers of the Space Wolves. But if you ask them, they're not psychers.
Oh.
Right? They're magicians. They call forth the magics of Fenris.
Right. The one with the Fenrian spirit.
Yeah, no, actually, yes.
Yes, okay. Do you think that's quite similar with the shamans from White Scars?
Well,
because that's where I was drawing it from.
Yes and no. But like they're full on like, no, we call on the spirit of Fenris, right? We're not psychers at all, not even remotely.
Special. Okay.
No, like, and with the shamans, right? Yeah. They're more like, oh yeah, no, we're probably tapping into something. You know, there's stuff and things.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you know, it's just like maybe tapping into something a little dark. Maybe I don't know. Look, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right. So, how do you think they have done design versus lore wise?
I think their design definitely matches their lore. You know, it's as it says on the tin, pretty much. You know. They've got Nordic inspiration. They've got a passion that is almost barbaric-like we mentioned before. You show all the cold elements from where they are from, the furs of the wolves that they are, you know, drawing their inspiration and spirit from. Everything just ties in perfect.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move on to final notes. So there is something that I wanted to point out in the design versus lore part, but I guess it's not actually lore. I guess it's Games Workshop lore.
Okay.
All right. So with Games Workshop, originally they had 4 Space Marine chapters that they focused on.
Okay.
All right. I'm guessing you can guess the first one?
Probably Dark Angel.
Well, Dark Angels are one of them, but it's Ultramarines, Dark Angels, Blood Angels, and Space Wolves.
Okay. And why are they the big 4?
Okay, so this is how they organized them. The Ultramarines were the orthodox. The Space Wolves were the unorthodox.
Right, okay.
Blood Angels were meant to be pure of spirit but corrupted of body, and the Dark Angels are the opposite, pure of body but corrupted of spirit. So the designers feel that they have failed the Space Wolves in some ways, in that they're just werewolves in space versus vampires in space sort of thing, you know, with that. But the idea that they originally had was they were meant to be the barbarians, and compared to the prim and proper soldiers of the Ultramarines, Ultramarines.
Well, I still think they do show the barbarian type.
Sure,
yeah?
they show the barbarian nature, but they don't show like a varied barbarian nature. It's just like they are Viking barbarians. That's
right.
it.
It's just the one thing you feel that they should be.
Well, that's what they were originally hoping for, that they were meant to be more from other cultures and that sort of thing.
I get that, but I feel like because they are an army, they do need that uniformity.
I guess that is true, but when
Yeah.
we're talking about the design versus law, I think this is maybe what they need to do with the successors.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like wolf things, they can be different apex predators maybe, but I think the better thing would be to tap into like those more primal fighting forces of the various
Yeah.
cultures around the world.
That's great, but I think we should save that for redesign.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
It's time for
Post-Heresy. All right, Sonny, here is the standard dude of the Post-Heresy Space Marines.
And we've moved on to the Mark 7 Aquila Power Armor. Hugh.
So you just read these names and now you feel like you know everything,
I
don't you?
know everything, okay? I
All
can never be wrong. Anyway, so
All right.
So they've come back to that cold blue-gray color. They seem to be shift between like that dark black armor to that light
Well, I
blue-gray.
don't think it was a dark black armor. I do think that there was one guy with a dark black armor, but I think it was more a neutral, darker gray
Definitely.
rather than the
This
blue
one-
gray that they have now.
So like I said earlier, this is a more of a cold gray, and
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
fitting.
yeah.
And of course, they've paired it with their iconic bright yellow. And I want you to know that this is actually a cold yellow as well.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because it's that very sort of bright yellow that is more cold. I'll show some comparisons you can tell on that. Even the red of the jewel is a cold red.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, but in comparison to the blue-gray, they do look a bit warmer because they are naturally warm colors. Finally, they've got a wolf skull logo on the pistol itself to show their roots.
All right, Sonny, and your favorite part where I show you the Primaris update.
Yes, and surprisingly, this isn't actually a very boring version at all. He seems to have a little bit more things, or patterning at least, going on him as compared to the other Primaris Marines that we have seen. So they've kept a lot of that brass tone on the Aquila, which is suggesting they're a bit more humble, you know? And of course, they have that black and red triangle spokes that look a lot like claws and blood, suggesting a ferocity or viciousness in the way that they fight.
And this time I've got 5 guys for you, not just 4.
5 guys! How come so special this time?
Well, because there's a burger chain 5 guys.
Oh, well, yes, you have finally shown me the infamous Phobos armor.
Yeah.
And, you know, he doesn't look that detailed on the Phobos armor as compared to the models.
Yeah, no, the
Ah.
Phobos armor can very much vary when it comes to art and
But-
models.
You know, it is nice that you have chosen this because we've never actually gotten to talk about the Phobos armor design before until now. So it has unfortunately taken over the Primaris armor in terms of this one being the most plain. But other than that, it has the main differentiator between this armor and their usual armor is the way that the calves, the legs are formed. It's more fitted to the musculature of the legs with the Phobos armor.
Oh, yeah,
As
yeah.
compared to your standard Marines, which is more like just a block.
But that's not particularly a Space Wolf thing. That's more just the Phobos armor, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about
Okay,
specifically
yeah.
the Phobos armor here, which actually shows that it's a more sleek and encourages nimble movements of the Marine. And a lot of that intimidation and mass of a Space Marine is taken away now that it looks more like a human soldier just in heavy armor. So I feel like that's pretty much all that this particular design has to offer because the rest of it, that you don't have
But I
much
feel
of the
that
others.
you're going a bit too far away from the idea of actually analyzing the Space Wolf parts
Yeah,
of it.
so I'm getting to that, and I'm saying that there is not a lot of the space wolf.
Oh, okay. So you're
being
just saying
represented in
that
this one.
the Phobos armor has sort of taken over the theming of the Space Wolf.
Which actually was something that we noted in the the previous one with the Primaris armor itself.
Yeah, it does seem to be a recurring theme that
Yeah.
the newer armors seem to be a lot plainer and a lot more stripped of chapter significance.
Yeah, the characteristics of the culture that they come from.
Yeah.
So the only thing we've got here is the pauldron that suggests where they come from, which is the Spaceful Company. And I actually don't see any other elements here that suggest wolf-like or Nordic elements.
All right, so you've ragged on your Primaris, you've done your duty.
Yeah, I've done my job.
All right,
Done my
so
job.
who do you want to talk about next?
The Terminator.
Are you going to be nice to him?
Yes, he's a good boy, and I'll tell you why.
All right.
So, he's got an extremely striking and interesting helmet marking for one. This is not something that we have seen in any of the other Terminator design of any other Legion before, because it clearly is a nod to the company symbol on his left shoulder marking. It looks like a wolf that has just devoured its prey, bloodied in the mouth, which I thought that's very much the barbaric aspect coming in, which is very nice. Of course, it's very tribalistic in the design with the claw and clay talismans, suggesting either, again, honor markings or superstitious culture. It's for protection or whatever, what have you. And you've got triangular spoke markings on the knee, which imitate claw marks. And you've got that fur tabard coming in the middle. And that's it. He's a good boy because he went and killed his enemies.
All right, I guess that means we're moving on to the next one then?
Yeah, is this the Dreadnought?
Oh, sure. If you want to move on to the Dreadnought, you
I
can.
like him. I mean, look, he's very colorful, but more importantly, it has an extremely medieval / noble impression, despite the tribal elements also incorporated.
Okay, explain how he's got a noble impression.
Well, look at all this little heraldry and the fancy patterns he's got going on. He's also lots of sort of this mixture of muted colors with the vibrant colors as well, with when you can see the ones on the side of the pauldrons. You see, got the lion.
Okay, all right.
What even is that? Is that even a lion? No, it's a wolf.
Yes,
it's
of course
wolf.
it's a wolf.
It's
What
got
else did you think it
stars.
was?
I don't know. It could be lots of... is that a bear? No, it's not a bear. It's a wolf.
Yes, it's all wolves.
It's all wolves, but they also look like lions for some reason.
It's wolves all the way down.
Okay, so he's got those Nordic trim patterns. It's a very ornate looking dreadnought. He's very fancy. He's got stars. He's got all the things. He looks like a flag walking.
He looks... I guess he does look like a medieval bit of heraldry walking on the battlefield.
He's got crests, he's got knots, he's got trims, and it looks like an artistic design, almost like a walking storybook for the space wolves.
Well, Sonny, it seems like you're very into these guys. It seems like you really enjoy them.
Well, that guy in particular was very interesting, yes.
Oh, you sound exactly like the golden boy. Is he golden?
Very educational.
But all right, so fine. Let's go to the last one.
So we've got the last guy, and I believe this is the Maximus power armor. I do not know which mark he is, but he is Maximus. Yes.
I made a mistake by giving you access to the wiki.
It's access to the internet. Oh,
That was the mistake.
Anyhow,
Noted.
so the space wolves.
Yes. The final space wolf
Yeah,
guy.
the space wolves in general have a very vintage look, actually, with its mixed use of both the bright and muted tones.
Are you saying just because they've got beards that they're hipsters?
Yeah, well, actually. Now that you mention it, well, we'll not say that, okay? So they're very similar to the Terminator we saw before, but a lot more toned down because he is just a legionary. His Terminator counterpart is meant to deal more damage and, play by size, so it makes sense for him to be more brutish in terms of how he looks and the elements used to express that.
You're talking about the standard Space Marine guy here, yeah?
Yeah, I'm saying in comparison to the Terminator.
Right.
Yeah. So he's basically the toned down version of the Terminator, which is good.
Right,
which is good.
Yeah.
And overall, there's that clear communication, as I said, of the hierarchy and roles of these different Marines. So I think they did a good job here.
All right, so shall we move on to design analysis? So you were pretty much saying it there at the end, but you just think that they've done a good job.
Yeah, they've done they matched their lore and description.
Well, when I take a look at them, I really much prefer the Space Marines of old.
Yeah, the ones that you saw before with the dark look.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually didn't think about it until you mentioned it to me off screen. And now that I'm looking at it, you're right, because I feel like the pale bluish gray with the yellow and the red it does look a little bit cartoonish.
Just a little.
A little. And I didn't see it before, but I do see it now. And it doesn't quite have that same sort of barbaric, brutish, dark element of it. With something that it was supposed to be the barbarian, you don't want it to have so colorful.
Well, the one thing that I look at, right, for example, when I think of them, I look at it this way. When I look at them this way, I think that they have a much better color scheme. However, when it comes to color psychology, I think they have a much worse color psychology. So, for example, the pale blue against the very bright yellow, it pops. It pops like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, yeah.
But when you take a look at what they're meant to be representing, right, it sort of doesn't quite feel the same.
It doesn't match. I believe like that gray, the cold gray is like cold, distant, and then you've got the yellow, which is meant to be like joy and excitement.
Yeah, well, like it feels like you're being attacked by the street sharks or something like that, right? No, like it feels like you're being attacked by a 90s cartoon. It's like, way out, man! Oh no, it's the spacewolves!
Oh god,
they're coming! Oh, cowabunga, dude!
Stop! No, gonna get cancelled.
Like, far out, man! What's a canceling? No, this is the 90s! But to be more realistic, I guess not realistic, but to be back to earth, I do think that the Horus Heresy color scheme fits them a lot more. And ironically, I think that they should have their color schemes swapped around, because in the Horus Heresy, they were so joyous and and all of this sort of thing until the end of the Heresy, where they're sort of like, I
lost half my bros.
Yeah, and like Lehman was a wreck. He was one of the few Primarchs who's just like, I'm out. I'm off to like kill the chaos, because I'm totally dealing with everything really well right now.
Thumbs up. Yeah.
But like that, I'm trying to be serious. Like, they did have a much more sort of joyous feeling, and now they do have a joyous feeling again. But I don't...
It's just still affected by the traumas of the past.
Yeah, but like I don't sort of see how they have such a joyous, happy sort of outlook compared to their previous selves, where it seems like they've got a lot of psychic damage and they're just like, you know what, I'm just going to be the whatever is immune to psychic damage and just pretend.
It's a heavy dose of copium is what this is.
Maybe, but I think like it just doesn't connect.
I do agree. I do think, hearing what you said, perhaps they should have swatched the color schemes around to represent the two different phases.
Swatched them?
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, swapped then.
All right, well, I guess we should move on to art. All right, Sunny, let's take a look at some of the modern Space Wolf art. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think about this one right here?
Wow, I mean, just look at the way that the lighting is captured on him.
Yeah.
It's not only that fire that's coming from underneath, but it's also that heavenly light glow that's coming from above. Mm-hmm. And it's just hitting the glint right off his axe and his face. But that expression is so filled with vigor and life. And you can see a lot of the barbaric expression here with, of course, the beard, the matted hair, the tabard and everything. But there's so much wildness in this artwork. Mm-hmm. But it shows that fighting spirit, like to victory kind of.
Well, there's
glory.
Another place that the light's shining off, which is of the Space Wolf symbol on the chest itself. The, Space Wolf Aquila, if you will.
Yeah, the Space Wolf Aquila. I think it really shows that spirit.
Well, Sunny, is there anything else on this one that you think we can take a look at, or do you think you pretty much exhausted everything?
Yeah, pretty much that. I think it's just the vigor that this artwork really portrays of the Space Wolves.
All right, well, how about this next one?
I think this is really evocative. It's something I haven't seen before in any of the other lore artworks. Mm-hmm. It's completely grayed out, but only the company's symbol and the brightness and the warmth of the company symbol is coming through in this artwork. Mm-hmm, and it really shows that it's like, we're not just Marines. we're all wolves and we're brothers and we're going into battle.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think that's what it's trying to show, because they're putting emphasis on the company symbol there.
Well, when I look at it, one of the things that I notice is where the values are at its highest is at the very expressive faces.
Oh, yes.
Like, all of these faces are exposed. Like, nobody's wearing helmets here.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
the only people who are wearing helmets are vaguely off in the distance, maybe.
Yeah.
But with all of the people who are present in the foreground, oh no, there is one.
One guy.
There is one.
But you can
guy.
barely see. You can.
Yeah.
Your attention is not to him at all. It's all the faces that you've of the space wolves that are visible that you are paying attention to.
Mm-hmm,
and artistically speaking, of course, you want to bring attention to the face.
Yeah.
But I think that really again shows that spirit of the space wolves, the passion that they have.
Mm-hmm,
And I think this is something that's really brought out in the space wolves artwork. It's the embodiment of the human spirit.
Okay, well, let's take a look at one final piece and let us know what you think.
I really like his face. Look, he's so happy. Yeah, he looks so happy doing whatever it is that he's doing.
I think shooting someone.
Shooting someone. Yeah, go down there, enemy. Oh, it's you. Because he's pointing the gun right at us. Ha not a lucky day for you, chump. That's what it looks like. But I love how the fire in the background is creating this warmth in his cheeks. It's making so rosy.
Actually, that's something that you noted before. A lot of the artworks have fire in them.
Yeah.
And using that as a sort of bounce lighting. Like
Yes.
when you take a look at it, there's, your standard lighting, but then there's also that warmth.
Secondary light source that coming through.
Yeah, but it's always a warm light
light
source.
Yeah, and I think that shows a lot about the warmth of this space marine, despite them coming from a cold place and from cold, traditions. And
well, I think what it shows more is, despite their very cold uniform,
yeah,
they are very warm
people.
inside.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other reasons why they have such a cold tone when it comes to all of the Space Wolves themselves, I think that's mostly because there's a lot of orange-haired, a lot of red-headed people, and that contrasts well against that.
It does. It's look really nice in that sense as well.
All right, so let's move on to... I don't think we should do design versus lore because I think they are pretty much the exact same people that they were before.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because I don't think they have changed a great deal. So instead, there's a new category that I want to move on to.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Who did it better? The fans or the company? So, Sunny, as you know, we have spent a great deal of time taking a look at various bits of artworks, and we've had this whole series trying to credit artists, and it's been a bit of a fruitless crusade, unfortunately.
A little, yeah.
But one of the things that we have done is we have looked at a lot of fan artists, and one of the ones that I would like us to take a look at right now is Lev Koy, and I think that he has some absolutely amazing Space Wolf
Yeah,
art.
I love seeing all his different renditions of all the Space Marines.
Well, I think that it really shows the essence of the Space Wolves without going completely off the wall. Because one of the things that I would like to show you after showing you some of these artworks right here, because I think some of these are absolutely fantastic, right? He's got both the new Space Wolves and the old, right? And the thing is, I think that these look just absolutely amazing. But one of the things I wanted to show you is the upgrade kits, particularly the Horus Heresy upgrade kit. And
they've got wolf heads.
Yeah, that's
not really done before. They never really do like full on completely different design helmets to represent a chapter.
Yeah, and these were very badly memed on because they essentially said Space Wolves are furries because right, they're just all wolf heads, right? Whereas I feel when it comes to this, let's take a look at his classic Space Wolf thing.
Yeah.
Right, I think this shows that Viking look a whole lot better.
It does. And what he does is that he shows different elements of wolves and Viking elements in each of these different helmet variations. It's not just one thing, right? Which we talked about how the Games Workshop designers were a bit upset that it was just very samey. They're just Wolverines, essentially.
Yeah.
But I feel like this would really encapsulate what they were trying to do. Because you've got one where you have the eye is encapsulated in the wolf head. The other one is like a hammer. Another one is like a Viking axe, I think.
Yep.
And then you've got a wolf head in the center one. And you've got two wolf claws coming and cupping around the face. And the other last one almost looks like a samurai, right? It looks very samurai, right? But he's got the fangs and the teeth of the face of a wolf. But he doesn't look like an animal. He looks still like a human.
Yeah, he looks like a Viking dude with a mustache with a...
like a wolf mask of some sort.
Well, no, like he's got extended canines,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to show you is the more modern ones. And I think that they actually look a decent amount better because it's not just all wolf heads, right? We've got some pelts here, right? And then we got the Preheresy upgrade, and it's very similar. We got just the shoulder pads, okay, like they're not exactly that exciting, but there is some variation between them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really good. I would like some other helmets, but what I wouldn't like is essentially the helmets.
Straight up wolf head.
Yeah, the helmets where it's just wolf heads and one dude with a top knot. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that looks so good. But even comparing those compared to Levski's designs.
Lev Koy.
Sorry, Lev Koy. Yeah, my bad.
It's okay.
But, like, you take a look at that and, wow. Just
so
like...
incredibly intricate.
Yeah, but, like, when we take a look at some of the other heads that they've been doing and that sort of thing, this is not something it's not out of the realm of possibility.
It isn't, yeah.
Like, you take a look at Chaos Helms and you're like...
Those are so over the top.
Yeah, and, like, why not do something like this? And I feel that's what we're sort of missing out on. And this is one of the parts that I sort of have a bit of frustration with some of the fans. I'm like, look, they've got too much detail, and there's like, oh, there's not too much detail. And then when it comes to things like the Horus Heresy helmet, right? It's all the exact same thing, right? There's little to no variation in each of them. And Horus Heresy is meant to be your sort of premium market.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not even meant to be, you know...
Your standard player? No,
no. They're almost like the historicals of the Warhammer players,
right?
right?
Oh, all right.
And I feel like they really got the shaft here.
Yeah, it looks a bit too... Like, because we have seen the pattern that the previous, like, before they become Primaris, like all the past designs, they have more character. They haven't taken advantage of that.
Yeah, but there is one upgrade sprue that I actually forgot, which was their Corvus pattern upgrade sprue, and I actually think that those ones did really well by comparison.
Yeah, you've got a lot of variation in the helmet and everything. It looks much nicer.
Yeah, I think it has a good mix of those Viking elements and the wolf elements. I think they look quite nice comparatively to the other upgrade sprue where it's just all wolf helms all the time.
I would agree with you. This is much better.
Yeah, but I think we're definitely going to have to give it to Lev Koy, right?
Yeah, he's definitely the winner here. It's more expressive. There's more better use of the elements for Viking and wolf parts. More variation. It's not all samey.
Yeah, and I think also he has a better sort of idea of the design brief. When it comes to the old ones, he incorporates more of those Viking elements, and when he comes to the newer ones, it's got more of those wolf elements.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to push the envelope on that. And I think that's exactly what's so appealing and has so much draw about it.
But imagine that you could get an upgrade sprue like this. They would sell out. They'd sell out. I feel like Games Workshop just isn't paying attention some of the times. For example, I think that one of the great things about the Spacewolves is they've got a lot of great individual characters, I think perhaps more than any other chapter, but a lot of them are firstborn, so they're likely to be rolling out soon.
Well, with that, let's move on to Final notes.
All right, Sunny, can you wrap up your thoughts on the Space Wolves? Can you tell us what you think about them?
Well, I think for one, they really show a lot of passion, and not in an exactly a super barbaric way, but they show a lot of spirit. I think they feel like dudes who they want to live their life to the fullest. Like this could be the last moment that they're alive, and they take every opportunity to express and do whatever it is that they want. They feel really human to me.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that doesn't come through in their more modern design as much is this spirit of honor that they have.
Right.
You know, they're very almost Klingon from Star Trek. Like they're warriors, right?
Yeah.
But they've got this whole honor culture, right?
Yes.
They're very honorable. It's like, all right, if I make an oath, I cannot break it, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I am ruined as a man if I
Yes.
do this. All right, let's move on to redesign. When it comes to the Space Wolves, I don't think that there's a lot of things that I would redesign beyond that of what Lev Koy shows. Like, for example, those suits of power armor, the way that he has them set out.
Yeah, there's like chainmail incorporated. There's lots of fur and claws and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And he incorporates the runic and asymmetrical style, which keeps them within that unorthodox area which they were originally meant to occupy.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that they're not super neat and tidy like the Ultramarines. They're a little bit haphazard, like how barbarians and Vikings are. They just like patch things together.
But I think that the biggest problem with the Space Wolves isn't the Space Wolves themselves. It's their lack of successes. They've got one successor now, but essentially their successors were just their quote-unquote great companies.
Okay.
And essentially they're just more Space Wolves and slightly different Space Wolves. And the thing is, if you want this to be the unorthodox, I think that there was way more ways of exploring this. So, for example, another people who I feel fit the Space Wolf theme very, very to a T, right? But a completely different culture is that of the Gurkhas.
Oh, okay. That's Indian.
Yeah, no. And the reason is, right, they're very, very honor bound, right?
Oh, okay, yes.
And, like, they are serious dudes. Like, when it comes to their oaths and stuff, for example, they can't draw their blade without drawing blood. So a lot of those soldiers will have lots of cuts on their arm because if their weapon is to be inspected, they'll draw their weapon and they'll cut themselves because there must be blood. And, like, this is a perfect fit for the Space Wolves. It's like, yeah, they love life and that sort of thing, but these are serious honor-bound dudes,
they
right?
are, yeah.
And see, like, I think that could fit the Canis Helix exactly. You know, imagine a chapter like, say, The Maned Wolves or something like that, right? So it's still within that purview, right? But you just attach that to other cultures. For example, why don't you try this out with Native American cultures, right? Why don't you try this out with like so many other cultures? Just come on.
Yeah,
like
there are many different ways to show like this sort of honor and tribal ritualistic sort of thing.
And like not just that, maybe even like go back in time like you did with the Vikings, like the Gauls. You could have like the Gaulish barbarians, right? And like that would be very cool. But no, instead we're just like,
we're going to be wolves.
Yeah, no. It's not even we're going to be wolves. We're going to be Viking werewolves. And that's it.
Right. And I think that is... You bring up a great point there, especially when it comes to unorthodox. They are meant to be the people that break the mold.
Yeah.
And they should do that. And then they're messy. They're not, coordinated in terms of style, quote unquote. But it's all about the culture and the different tribes, right? And that's kind of the whole point of the clan. Wolf clans. They have to have their own special thing about them, but that's not coming through.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I feel like is the big miss, right? And it seems like they have just completely wasted their opportunity. For example, even cyberpunk, right? The punk element, this idea of these heroic spirits, right? These people who will just go above and beyond just so that they can die a glorious death. How could you not incorporate something like that into the Space Wolves, into another,
Yeah, they definitely feel like the type of chapter that would do such a thing.
Yeah, you could have so many opportunities, but they're just like, no, they're wolves.
They're wolves.
And that's it. That's it.
I can see that you're very passionate about this, Cal.
Yeah.
But perhaps we should throw our passion to something else.
No, don't do this to me. Don't.
Keep those brushes with... Bye-bye!
No! You don't seem to understand the situation. I understand that if any more words come pouring out your fat mouth, I'm gonna have to take every Imperial citizen in this star sector. You lived your life for the Emperor. You're gonna die for some citizens. Someone is.